Hi, everyone. Today I want to show you how you can connect to your Oracle AI database without a password using OCI Resource Principals. So before we go into the demo, I just want to cover how database authentication works in the case that you're using IAM tokens. For quite some time, you've been able to use IAM tokens to authenticate as a database user. For instance, on the left-hand side, we see we have this IAM user. Um, Typically, you would use some sort of API key or long-lived credential to authenticate yourself as that user. All you would do is use the OCI CLI to generate a DB token from IAM. IAM would return that token. You would then use that token in whatever database client you use, and it would use that token to authenticate to the database, and it would map your user to a database user. Likewise, you can also use this token with OCI applications. So in the case where you don't want to use long-lived credentials like an API key, you can use some of the uh, methods that we have built into OCI, such as instance principals and resource principals. In the case of instance principals, these are using OCI VMs and authorizing OCI VMs to access the database. And resource principals are authorizing Oracle services, OCI services, to access these services. So today we're going to mainly focus on resource principles, and to give you a little bit more detail on what resource principles are, when you have an OCI resource, in the case, say, of OCI function, an Oracle AI database, or even a DevOps pipeline, if you need that service to interact with other Oracle services, for instance, accessing an object storage bucket, or accessing just any resource on the OCI API, you can give that service its own identity. So you don't have to give it your credential or create a service account for that service. How this works is the resource, for instance, a function, can fetch a session token from IAM. This is a temporary token, so it's not long-lived. And this token is then used to access these resources. And much like your own users, you can define policies to restrict or grant access to Oracle resources, um, similar to what you do with normal users. Okay, so today I'm going to show you how you can access an Oracle database using an OCI function in this fashion. So on the left-hand side, we see we have OCI functions. Here, all the function would do is run this OCI CLI command at the top left, OCI IAMDB token get auth resource principal. The important part is auth resource principal. So we're telling it this function is going to request a token. Then what IAM will do is it will check the group assignment. So what group is that function a part of? And here you would create a dynamic group with a matching rule resource.id equals, and then the ID of the function. So you're telling IAM, I have this function that's part of this dynamic group. Perfect. Once it verifies that, it will return a token, the DB token to be specific, and it will return the private key. You then use that token to connect to the database. So all you would do is in your database client, you just point to that token and then make database calls. And when it makes those database calls, it then maps the user with that's defined within that token to a database user. So here, this is pretty much the flow, fairly straightforward. So I'll go ahead and show you how you do this. So the high level steps are number one, you create a function application. Number two, you have to create a custom Docker file with the OCI CLI installation steps. Three, you have to add the token generation code to the function. 4, you have to create a dynamic group associated mapping to that function. And number 5, you have to map a database user to that dynamic group. So the first thing you'll want to do is you will want to go to the OCI console, and then at the top left, click the navigation menu and search functions, and then you'll see applications here. Let's open the applications. Here, change my region. Here, you'll create an application, you give it a name, you select the VCN and the subnet that it should be a part of, and select the shape. We support x86 or ARM, and then you click create. So I already have one set up, so I'll go ahead and show you that. So once you've created the application, there's a getting started guide. I won't go through all of these steps here, but all you have to do is follow these guides. That's how to set up the function. Relatively straightforward here. It'll tell you how to set up the container registry and the function CLI and so on. Okay, so once you set all of that up, you will have a function set up locally on whatever workspace you like to use. And I'll go ahead and share that. So here on the screen now, we have a sample function. The function is relatively straightforward. I have this handler function, which has a connect string. This is the database connect string. You can find this on the console in the autonomous database section. All this connect string is the string that's used to connect to the database. And then line 51, we see I have this os.system function. This is running the OCI CLI on the function in order to get the database token. So you can see I'm running /function/OCI IAM DB token get auth resource principal. And then I'm setting that token location in /temp. And here, this will just generate the token. And then I have my database client here. Here I'm using the Oracle DB Python drivers. So I'm running Oracle DB.connect, and I'm giving it this access token. Here I have a callback function, which is just responsible for regenerating the token if it expires. So that's all this function does. It handles the logic to refresh the token. And then I give it the connect string. Here within the function, I'm just running a very basic SQL command, select star from dual, and then printing that out. Okay, once you write the function code for this, you will have to set up a custom Docker file that has the steps to install the CLI because the CLI is not installed by default. So we can see here on line 1, this is me setting up the build stage image. This is using our own function images, setting the work directory, which is /function, adding my requirements file, and then running a bunch of different commands to install Python and the OCI CLI. So you can see on line 6, this is the command to install the OCI CLI. You can find this in the CLI documentation. So run curl, and then I'm providing some arguments to this, setting the installation directory to /function, the exec directory to /function, the script directory to /function, and I'm accepting all of the defaults so I can run this non-interactively. Once I run that, I just verify that the CLI is installed on line 8, and that's pretty much it. So once you do that, you can run the fn deploy commands, which looks like this. Fn deploy app, then the name of your application, and then verbose if you want to give it some more logs, and then you can invoke it. Now it won't run immediately. What we have to do is go into OCI. We have to set up the IAM policies that allow the the user the function to access um, that token. So what I'll do is in the top left, I will search domains, go to identity domains, click on the active identity domain, click on dynamic groups, then create a dynamic group. Just call this test dynamic group. Then we have to select a rule. So the rule here will be any resource.id equals, and here I have to get the ID of my function. So I'll go back to the function service. I'll go to the function here, DB access from function. I have this OCID here. So I'll copy this, paste it in the resource ID, close that out, and then create. So there we go. I have a dynamic group here with the rule that says any resource.id that equals the function ID. So essentially, I'm just saying this group consists of my function that I just created. Once the function or once the dynamic group is created, we then have to create the mapping from this dynamic group to the database user. So to do that, we just have to run two very simple commands. Let me find it. Here we go. So the commands are fairly simple. The first one is we have to enable external authentication and tell it OCI IAM. So this is telling the database accept tokens that are generated by OCI IAM so we can authenticate to the database. Second command we have to run is a simple global user. So create user. In my case, I'm calling it function user. You can call this whatever you'd like. Identified globally as, and then we give it the IAM group name and then the name of the dynamic group that this user is a part of. So the first part of this should be the identity domain you're using. In my case, I'm using Oracle Identity Cloud Service, so I set that as Oracle Identity Cloud Service. And then the dynamic group's name here, I'm calling it Matthew McDaniel Functions. This can be whatever you name your dynamic group. Once we do that, we can go ahead and run the fn invoke. So let me expand this. And I'll find command for it. Yep, so I'm invoking this function now, the GenAI application with the function name db access from function. All right, and we can see I run that select star from dual. You can see the message and the results here. Okay, so this demonstrates how you can use resource principals to authenticate to Oracle databases. This is super useful in cases where you don't want to use hard-coded credentials or store credentials externally. It's a very flexible method where you don't have to worry about rotating those credentials either, because this method relies on using a short-lived token rather than long-lived credentials.